Kiana moved with the wind as if she had been born from it. Her steps were light, delicate, and full of an ancient rhythm no one had taught her. Each night, beneath the silvery eye of the moon, she danced alone in the clearing at the edge of the village of Umud, her feet bare against the cool earth. The grasses there had long since grown accustomed to her presence, swaying and curling around her like loyal friends who anticipated her movements. The trees leaned in, the stars shimmered brighter, and the wind circled her waist like a sash. Even the birds, who usually chirped their lullabies, fell silent to watch her. Her grandmother, Mama Obo, would sit on the porch of their small hut, wrapped in her faded wrapper, watching the girl with eyes filled with both pride and worry. "The world," she would say softly, mostly to herself, "does not know how to love a child touched by spirits." Kiana heard her but never responded. Her heart pulsed with music older than drums, and her soul was made of rhythm and longing. The village respected Mama Obo for her knowledge of herbs and old stories, but they kept their distance from Kiana. Children would hide behind baskets or from within the market stalls, peeking at her with wide eyes as she twirled, whispering that she could speak to the wind. Some believed she had been born during a thunderstorm that cracked open the sky and let something magical slip through. Others said her mother had danced the same way before vanishing into the forest one night and never returning. The old women clucked their tongues and warned their daughters to stay away. "That girl," they'd mutter, "is not meant for our ways." The village elders ignored her entirely. She was just a barefoot orphan, a whisper of wind and sorrow who should remain in the background, silent and unseen. But Kiana burned with quiet fire. And the Festival of Light was all she dreamed about. Every year, lanterns floated above Umud like glowing seeds, and music filled the air for 3 days and nights. Dancers, chosen from each family, would perform in honor of the ancestors. It was said the most graceful dancer would receive a blessing. Some claimed it was gold, others a marriage proposal, but Kiana knew it was something deeper. A recognition. A place in the rhythm of the world. She had never been invited. Orphans were rarely chosen, and barefoot girls with windswept hair were laughed off. Yet each year, Kiana danced in the shadows of the celebration. Behind the crowds, just where the light faded into the trees, she would sway and spin to the music carried by the wind. She knew the beats better than the drummers, felt them before they were played. Her dress was a patchwork of old cloth stitched together by Mama Obo, but it flowed around her like it had been spun by the gods. This year, though, something felt different. The wind was stronger, sharper, as if it carried a message. The festival preparations were underway, boys hung lanterns, girls practiced hand claps and chants, and the chosen dancers rehearsed in the village square under the watchful eyes of the elders. Kiana stayed away, but the wind tugged at her, swirling around her ankles like an impatient friend. Mama Obo noticed. "The wind is calling you harder this time," she said, her voice cracking with age and warning. "But the wind has never protected girls like you." On the eve of the festival, Kiana sat by the fire, silent. Mama Obo placed a warm hand on her head. "You have a gift," she whispered. "But gifts are not always blessings in this world." Kiana didn't answer. Her heart ached. She wanted to be seen, not just as the dancing girl in the dark, but as someone who belonged. As someone whose movements could stir more than whispers. That night, she danced under the full moon until her limbs ached and her chest heaved. She fell asleep in the clearing, tears drying on her cheeks, while the wind curled around her like a blanket. Morning came and the sky was strange. Heavy. Cloudless yet dim. The village stirred but hesitated. The sun didn't blaze as it should have. There was no warmth. As noon approached and still no light broke through, a quiet panic began to build. The queen mother of the village, old and regal, emerged from her hut wrapped in white. She raised her hands to the sky and chanted, but the sky did not change. The elders murmured and called the drummers to begin anyway, hoping rhythm would bring back the light. The dancers stepped into the square. The music started. But something was wrong. The drums sounded dull. The claps fell flat. The lanterns, though lit, flickered strangely. And then a strong gust of wind blew through the square, extinguishing every flame. A collective gasp escaped the crowd. The queen mother turned to the elders. "Something is missing," she said. "Or someone." Children whispered. "What about the girl? The wind girl?" Someone ran to fetch Mama Obo. She arrived, panting, leaning on her walking stick. "What do you want with me?" she asked. "Not you," the queen mother said. "Your granddaughter." Mama Obo's face tightened. "You ban her. You mock her. And now you call her?" "We ask," the queen said. "The sky has refused to shine. And the wind speaks her name." Kiana was found sitting by the stream, her feet in the water, humming to herself. She had not known of the sky's silence. But when they told her, her heart stuttered. Could it be? They brought her to the square. The villagers parted. She stood alone in her patched dress, her hair wild, her feet caked with earth. The queen raised her hand. Dance. At first, Kiana hesitated. What if she failed? But then, a breeze kissed her cheek. She closed her eyes. Her feet moved. Slowly. Then faster. Her arms opened like wings. She let the music inside her take control, even though no drums played. The crowd fell silent. They could hear the rustle of the trees, the whoosh of the wind, the hum of the earth beneath her. As she danced, the sky began to change. Light, golden and soft, broke through. The lanterns reignited. The breeze turned to a melody. And the birds began to sing. Kiana danced until the entire village wept. When she finally stopped, the queen walked to her. We were blind, she said. The ancestors have spoken through you. The elders bowed their heads. Children rushed forward to touch her hand. That night, Kiana lit the first lantern of the Festival of Light. Not because she was chosen, but because the sky itself had waited for her. And in her dance, Umud found its rhythm again. The Festival of Light came only once every 10 years, and when it did, the entire kingdom lit up with wonder. Lanterns were hung from the tallest trees, every home was swept and decorated with glowing herbs, and music flowed like the rivers that fed Umud's soil. It was the one time the moon's full blessing was said to fall over the land, and the chosen dancers would carry that blessing through their feet and into the hearts of the people. Kiana had waited her whole life for this moment. Her grandmother had told her stories about past festivals, how dancers wore robes that shimmered like starlight, how crowds gathered from distant villages, how even the wind stood still to listen. Kiana had imagined herself there 1,000 times. In her mind, she danced barefoot beneath the lunar flame, her arms slicing through air like whispers, her movements conjuring wind and hush. She did not need silks or jewels. She had rhythm. She had soul. She had the wind. When the time came to choose dancers for the festival, Kiana arrived early at the village square. The elders sat beneath the carved acacia tree, wearing robes of deep green and gold, holding scrolls with names already half-written. Kiana waited patiently, her fingers nervously tracing the hem of her simple wrapper. Her heart raced not with pride, but with a quiet hope she didn't dare speak aloud. One by one, the daughters of chiefs and merchants were called forward. A girl whose family sold dyes. Another whose mother wove cloth for the royal court. All dressed in bright fabrics, their feet clad in soft leather, their heads adorned with flowers. When the scroll reached its last few names, Kiana stepped forward, unsure if she had been seen. One of the elders raised a brow at her. You are not summoned. I came to offer a dance, she said softly. The festival is for the moon and I dance for the moon. A murmur passed through the seated circle. Another elder, older and sterner, waved a hand dismissively. The festival is not for the forgotten. It is for those with lineage, with honor, with place. But she started. You are no one's daughter of record, he continued. Your mother died unnamed. Your father unknown. What blessing can you bring to the kingdom? Kiana's lips parted, but no sound came. Around her, other girls stifled laughter. One whispered something about dirt and wind and madness. Kiana looked down at her bare feet, dust-stained and calloused. The elder held her gaze, then scratched something onto the parchment, her absence sealed. You may leave, he said. She turned, not seeing clearly where she walked. Her ears were hot, her chest tight. Behind her, the names were celebrated, the choices applauded, the steps rehearsed. But Kiana heard only silence. Not even the wind stirred for her now. She walked to the edge of the village, where the grass grew long and untamed. There, beneath the shade of the moon tree, she sat on a flat stone, staring into the horizon. Her chest ached, not just from rejection, but from the cruel way it was delivered. It wasn't that she was denied a place, she could have accepted that with grace. It was that she was treated as if she didn't exist at all. As if her feet had never danced. As if her breath had never stirred the wind. Her grandmother found her there later, carrying a bundle of food wrapped in cloth. She said nothing at first, just sat beside her and laid a gentle hand on her back. For a long time, they watched the stars appear one by one as the sky darkened. I am not angry that they didn't choose me, Kiana finally said. I am angry that they think I have nothing to give. Her grandmother's hand moved in small circles, soft and slow. The wind does not shout to be heard. It simply moves. Kiana closed her eyes, letting those words settle. But still, inside her, something fragile had cracked. The Festival of Light was not just a ceremony. It was a symbol, a chance to be seen, to be part of something larger. And now it would proceed without her music, without her steps, without the wind she carried in her bones. For the next few days she stayed home, not attending rehearsals or gatherings. The village buzzed with excitement, but she moved like a shadow among them. The only place she found peace was in the grove beyond the river, where no one watched and no one laughed. There, under the moonlight, she still danced. Not for recognition. Not for celebration. But because the rhythm inside her would not die. And though she didn't know it, far above the grove the clouds hesitated. The stars flickered more slowly. And the moon, high in the sky, looked down upon the girl who danced with sorrow in her limbs and grace in her breath, and did not forget her. Kiana clasps the anklets around her ankles, and a warmth rushes through her body. She takes a tentative step, then another, and with each movement the world responds. Leaves shiver in harmony, grass bends gently, and even the sun seems to pause as she twirls. Her dance no longer feels like motion alone, but a conversation with the world itself. She hides the anklets during the day but returns nightly to the baobab tree. Each night, her dances become more vibrant, more powerful. The winds begin arriving early as if eager to watch. Owls gather on branches. The air is no longer just air, it pulses with unseen watchers. One night, a child from the village sees her dancing. He tells his mother, who tells the baker, who tells the priest. Whispers rise again, not of pity but awe. The villagers don't understand it fully, but they sense something ancient unfolding. Still, the elders scoff, warning the people not to be seduced by spectacle. Kiana's grandmother, however, begins to worry. She remembers old tales, songs of women who danced too closely with the spirits and were swept into storms. She warns Kiana, gifts are blessings, child. But gifts can also test the soul. But Kiana, though respectful, is certain now, her dance is not rebellion but destiny. As the Festival of Light nears, and the sky grows more restless by the day, she continues her twilight dances, each one echoing louder into the heavens. Kiana entered the forest alone, guided only by the tugging of her spirit and the hum of her anklets, which now pulsed with a stronger rhythm. The path was wild, roots snaked across her feet, and the air thickened with the scent of moss and old rain. Birds quieted as she passed, and the deeper she went, the more she felt watched, not by eyes but by memory, like the trees themselves remembered dances long forgotten. The sky shrine appeared suddenly, not rising like a building but unfolding like a memory too big to stay hidden. Half consumed by vines and age, it was a broken circle of stone columns, open to the heavens above. In the center sat an old woman, blind, with long silver hair that swept the ground. Her face was lined not just by time, but by rhythm, every wrinkle a memory of motion. Without looking, the priestess spoke. "You've brought the wind with you, girl." Startled, Kiana stepped back. "I didn't mean to trespass." "There is no trespass when the sky sends someone," the priestess said, her voice calm like falling dust. "Sit." Kiana obeyed. The priestess reached out, not toward her face but toward her feet. Her hands hovered above the anklets and began to tremble. "A chosen step," she whispered. "We haven't seen one in generations. Not since the sky last grew angry." Kiana blinked. "What do you mean?" The priestess turned her clouded eyes toward her. "Long ago the dance was not for celebration. It was a contract. Every 10 years, during the Festival of Light, one who is chosen must dance, not for people but for balance. If the chosen step does not move, the sky closes itself." She reached toward the heavens and added, "No stars. No moon. No crops. No song." Kiana's throat tightened. "But the elders chose others. I wasn't even considered." The priestess shook her head. "The elders look with old eyes, trained on old traditions. The sky chooses with its own eyes. The anklets found you, didn't they?" Kiana nodded slowly. "The anklets were once worn by Mari, the first wind dancer. They come only when the cycle nears its turning." A gust of wind tore through the broken shrine, scattering dry petals across the floor. The priestess stood slowly and said, "If you do not dance on the final night of the festival, the light will stay hidden. The rhythm will be broken." Kiana stood too, heart pounding. "But how can I dance if they won't let me near the stage?" The priestess gave a crooked smile. "The sky has never cared for stages, child. You dance where the sky can see you." She turned away, her long hair brushing stone. "But beware, the others will not welcome this truth. They will think you're trying to shame them, to steal their moment." Kiana clenched her fists. "I don't care about their moments. I just want the sky to shine again." The priestess lowered herself to the center of the shrine and began to hum. Then listen carefully. Let the anklets guide you. Let your heart stay clean. Do not dance to punish, dance to remind. The rhythm does not seek revenge. It seeks balance. That night, Kiana slept beneath the broken columns of the sky shrine. She dreamed of light pouring from cracks in the sky, of children reaching for stars and fruit trees weeping dry leaves. She awoke with resolve. The journey back to Umud was different. The forest no longer felt wild, it felt like it was holding its breath. Kiana returned home quietly. She didn't tell her grandmother what she'd seen, not yet. She resumed her nightly dances beneath the baobab, now not just for herself, but for something much larger. As her feet moved, the anklets glowed faintly. Her rhythm, now fuller, echoed not just across the soil, but into the roots, the rivers, the sky above. And as the days crept toward the festival, the sky began to grow strange. The moon, once full, now flickered like a heartbeat. Stars disappeared one by one. Clouds formed odd shapes, spirals, circles, lines that seemed to trace movement. In the village, people began to worry. "It's just the season," said one elder. "A shift in the wind," said another. But deep down they all felt it, something wasn't right. And Kiana knew the truth, the sky was waiting for her. The Festival of Light, once a dazzling affair that lit up the entire kingdom, begins with all its expected splendor, at least on the surface. Colorful canopies drape the streets, drums thunder in rhythm, and petals rain down from carved balconies as noble dancers take their places. Each movement is rehearsed, precise, and elegant. But something feels off. The energy in the air is heavy, unmoved, like breath held too long. The dancers twirl and leap, their silk garments flashing with gold and silver thread. Yet the wind does not rise to meet their motion. The torches lining the roads flicker weakly, their flames dull. The elders sit in their carved thrones, faces tight with forced smiles, clapping politely as each dance concludes. They whisper among themselves, brushing off the silence of the heavens as a coincidence. Queen Neaera, robed in deep sapphire, watches from her elevated seat. Her crown, shaped like the crescent moon, glints under the dimmed light. She leans toward her advisor, her voice low and uncertain. "Has the moon not yet risen?" The advisor glances at the sky and shakes his head. "Still covered by clouds, my queen." Behind them, nobles begin murmuring. Children ask why the stars are hiding. Traders from distant lands frown and check the time by the dying light of lanterns. The air remains motionless. Not a single leaf stirs. The usual whispering winds of the festival are absent, as if nature itself refuses to celebrate. Deep in the crowd, a few villagers begin to remember. They whisper tales about a girl who used to dance beneath the baobab tree, how the wind used to rise around her feet, how even the trees leaned closer when she moved. They recall a storm that once came and left no harm, as if bowing to her rhythm. Some glance toward the direction of Kiana's hut, wondering if the stories were true. Among the dancers, Rimel, the elder's favored granddaughter, finishes her piece, bowing gracefully. But her expression is troubled. She too feels the stillness. As she steps away from the stage, her hand brushes her arm where goosebumps have risen. "It's too quiet," she murmurs to another dancer. "Even the wind has turned its back on us." Backstage, attendants bustle to prepare the final performance, lighting incense and adjusting robes. But the sky remains untouched. Not a single cloud has moved. The moon stays hidden, as though sulking behind a thick curtain of silence. A low rumble echoes through the sky, not thunder exactly but something older. A memory in the clouds. Queen Neaera rises slowly, her gaze fixed above. Her voice rings out, not in command but in yearning. "If we have forgotten someone, may the sky forgive us." The elder council stiffens, unwilling to show doubt. But even they exchange glances of discomfort. Something is undeniably wrong. The ground itself seems to pulse beneath their feet, waiting for a beat that has not yet been played. And far from the square, on a hill overlooking the village, Kiana watches with a quiet ache in her chest. She sees the dancers, hears the drums, but feels the silence where there should be song. Her fingers tighten around the glowing anklets she holds. The sky is waiting just as the priestess said. And perhaps, it is waiting for her. The village celebrates in confusion that night, trying to force joy into a sky that refuses to respond. But far away from the torches and trumpets, atop a lone hill where the land rises like a breath held too long, Kiana steps into the darkness. She carries no flute. No drum beats to mark the rhythm. Only the pulse of the anklets around her ankles, warm, alive, and humming with power. The grass is soft beneath her feet, damp with the breath of night. A cool wind brushes her cheek, as if testing her presence, remembering her scent. She exhales slowly, closes her eyes, and lets her arms rise like branches reaching for the stars. The first step is uncertain, but it doesn't matter. Something greater moves with her. The anklets flicker with pale blue light, tracing each movement in glowing lines across the ground. She twirls. The earth hums. Her feet strike the soil with a grace no teacher ever gave her, no elder ever taught. The rhythm builds, not loud, not brash, but deep, steady, like the heartbeat of something ancient waking beneath her. Above, the clouds begin to shift. They roll and stretch like curtains drawn back by unseen hands. The stars, long hidden, blink once, then twice, and finally begin to shine. Down below, the village continues its empty festival, unaware that the true performance takes place in the silence of the hills. A group of deer appears near the edge of the clearing, standing still with ears turned forward. A fox emerges from a bush and sits quietly. An owl glides down to perch on a tree branch above her. None make a sound. All watch. Thunder rolls in the distance, not a warning, not a threat. It follows the rhythm of her feet. Boom, boom, boom. Like a drum joining her dance. The wind begins to swirl around her, gentle but firm, lifting her scarf and spinning it like smoke. Her hair floats, wild and free, as if even gravity pauses to let her fly. And still she dances. She leaps, and the light beneath her pulses outward in rings that ripple through the soil. She spins, and the sky responds with streaks of starlight breaking through the veil. Her body becomes a story the heavens have waited to hear. Every gesture whispers truth. Every motion speaks her name. Kiana. Chosen step. Daughter of wind. Voice of rhythm. She doesn't hear the whisper spoken from the shrine ruins deep in the forest, but the priestess smiles in her sleep. The gods remember her. The earth remembers her. Somewhere in the village, a child wakes suddenly and points at the sky through their window. The stars, they cry. The stars are coming back. In her hilltop solitude, Kiana slows. The dance fades to stillness. She bows her head. The anklets stop glowing, the rhythm quiets. She places her hand over her heart, breathing deep. The sky above her is clear now, ink dark and full of stars. She danced for no audience. But the heavens saw her. And they remembered. They weren't supposed to be out there, not that late, not during the festival when every child was expected to stay close, dressed in their ceremonial beads and painted faces. But curiosity is a stronger force than tradition, especially when it flickers at the edge of your vision like a forgotten dream. And for these children, small feet, sharp eyes, restless hearts, it began as a whisper. "She's gone up the hill," the smallest one said, pointing toward the distant slope beyond the last drumbeat of the festival. The others hesitated. They'd heard stories. The hill was sacred, forbidden except during offerings or burials. But the stars had begun to return, and the music in the village square felt empty, hollow, forced. One by one, drawn by something they couldn't name, the children slipped into the dark, giggling behind their hands and darting between shadows like fireflies. Their laughter died as they neared the crest. There, bathed in moonlight and rhythm, was Kiana. She did not see them. Her eyes were closed. Her body swayed and spun with a grace that defied all logic, like wind in the form of flesh, like music made visible. The anklets on her feet pulsed with light, and the very ground beneath her shimmered with soft blue fire. It wasn't the kind of dancing they'd seen during the festivals. This was older, wilder, free. The children stood wide-eyed. No one dared to speak. But something in the dance called to them, not in words, not in shouts, but deep in the bones, in the part of their hearts that still remembered playing in rainstorms and talking to the moon. Then the tallest among them, a brave girl with twin braids, stepped forward. She mirrored Kiana's spin. Her movement was clumsy at first. Her foot caught a rock. She stumbled. But Kiana didn't stop. She didn't even notice. The girl tried again, this time with less thought and more feeling. She spun. And the stars above shimmered just a little brighter. The other children gasped. One of them whispered, "Did you see that?" Then another stepped forward. And another. Soon the hill was filled with small figures moving in rhythm, trying their best to copy the motion of the girl at the center of it all. Their feet sparked faint flickers. Their laughter returned, not the mischievous kind but laughter born from awe, like being part of something far bigger than themselves. Kiana opened her eyes. She didn't speak. She didn't stop. She simply smiled, a quiet, knowing smile, and adjusted her movement just slightly. Slower now, easier to follow. Her dance began to teach without words. She became the rhythm and the children followed. One child, a little boy with a wide smile and a loud voice, couldn't hold it in. He turned and sprinted down the hill, shouting all the way, "She's making the sky shine." He burst into the edge of the festival, weaving through dancing elders and puzzled drummers, screaming with joy. "She's up there. She's dancing. And the stars, she's making the stars come back." At first the adults tried to quiet him. "Settle down," one said. "It's just stories in your head." But then a few others began to listen. One woman holding her infant child looked up. The sky did seem different. The stars were clearer than they had been in weeks. She followed the boy. Then a man with a twisted knee, one who hadn't danced in years, began to feel the strange pull in his legs, as though something deep inside his muscles remembered a beat he hadn't moved to since childhood. One by one they turned. The elders noticed. "No one must leave the square," barked Elder Gugu, slamming his staff to the ground. "This is where the ritual belongs." But the crowd was already thinning. Some were walking. Others were running. Even the drummers slowed their hands, glancing up toward the hill. A few dropped their sticks entirely. The children who had remained at the hill saw the torches first, bobbing up the slope like glowing insects. The girl with the twin braids ran back to Kiana. "They're coming," she whispered, breathless. "The whole village." Kiana didn't speak. She raised her hands higher. The wind stirred again, swirling around the children. The grass danced with them. The stars shimmered brighter still. The sky, once silent, now pulsed with a rhythm that echoed in every chest. When the villagers reached the top of the hill, they didn't speak. They couldn't. The sight before them stripped away language. Children and wind. Firelight and stars. A girl, no, a force, moving with the kind of power that didn't need permission to exist. Even the elders stood in stunned silence. And one by one the villagers began to move. Some swayed where they stood, unsure. Others let their bodies fall into motion, clumsy but honest. The rhythm was not forced. It came from within. Old men remembered dances they hadn't done since youth. Mothers held their babies and stepped gently side to side. Young boys drummed on their chests. Elder Gugu tried to shout again, but something caught in his throat. It was not fear. It was recognition. He remembered, dimly, a time when dances were not locked into ceremonies, when rhythm flowed from the land itself. He remembered stories his grandmother told him, of a child chosen by the sky, of stars that responded to feet on soil. And as he watched Kiana dance, he understood. Too late, perhaps, but he understood. And then, finally, he bowed his head. No one gave an order. No one played a drum. But the entire village, young and old, rich and poor, began to dance. Not to entertain. Not to impress. But to remember. The stars above blazed in full now. The clouds had all vanished. A soft mist rose from the ground, catching the starlight like diamonds in the air. Animals lingered at the edges of the gathering, respectful and quiet. Kiana slowed. The anklets glowed warm, no longer urgent. The beat in the air softened. She looked at the crowd, her people. Her voice rose, calm and clear for the first time. "This is the dance that remembers." And the village, united in silence, bowed together. The children had led them. The stars had returned. And the sky, at long last, had begun to listen again. The stage was set, glowing under 100 lanterns, each flickering with hope and tradition. The queen, dressed in a robe stitched with stardust patterns, sat tall upon her throne. The musicians lifted their instruments. The final dance of the Festival of Light was about to begin. Noble families leaned forward in their seats. The elders, draped in ceremonial reds and golds, nodded with anticipation. The dancers appeared, 12 of them in silver veils, their feet adorned with bells that jingled with every poised movement. They took their positions in the center of the great stage, surrounded by burning incense and sacred flowers. But just as the first beat of the drum echoed, something odd happened. The stars blinked out. Not faded. Not dimmed. They disappeared. A hush fell like a heavy cloak across the crowd. The music faltered. The wind, which had been warm and gentle, stilled entirely. Even the insects seemed to hold their breath. The sky, once promising a silver dance of moonlight, was now a wall of silent black. Gasps spread through the crowd like wildfire. Someone dropped a cup. A child began to cry. The queen stood slowly, eyes scanning the heavens. "What is this?" she whispered, but no one had an answer. The eldest of the council, a man named Obidi, cleared his throat. "Perhaps it's a passing cloud," he said. Nothing more. But everyone could feel it in their bones. This was not weather. This was judgment. Then, faint at first, came a sound, like thunder humming in rhythm. A low pulse, steady and sure. It wasn't coming from the stage. It came from beyond the hill, past the lanterns and the noble tents, far from the path of protocol. People turned their heads, searching. And then they saw it, a soft shimmer of light from the distant hills, rising like mist and fire. At first only one child pointed. Then another whispered, "She's there, she's dancing." The queen followed their gaze. Her dark eyes narrowed. "Who?" "A girl," someone muttered. "The barefoot girl. Kiana." Recognition dawned in the queen's face, slow and curious. Obidi stepped forward, alarmed. "Your Majesty, she was not selected. This is unorthodox. She has no place." The queen raised her hand, silencing him. "She makes the stars return," she said. "Bring her here. Now." A servant hesitated. "Shall I send guards?" "No," the queen said, her voice low and firm. "Go yourself. Ask her with respect." The elders whispered furiously among themselves. "She's not noble-born. She's just a child. This will insult tradition." The queen turned sharply to them. "What do you value more? Your pride or the sky?" No one answered. Two young attendants ran off in the direction of the hills. The music remained silent. The dancers on stage stood frozen, unsure whether to bow or flee. The tension in the air was like a taut string, one pull away from breaking. Meanwhile, on the hill, Kiana had not stopped. Her body moved with a freedom born of grief, longing, and unspoken wisdom. The anklets on her feet glowed softly, guiding each step like the hands of ancestors. The sky above her was clearing, one star at a time. The clouds seemed to part for her like curtains in a sacred play. Around her, the children continued to dance, not with technique or form but with pure feeling. Their small feet kicked up dust that shimmered with light. Animals still watched from the trees, owls, foxes, even a deer with glowing antlers. Kiana did not notice the attendants approaching until they stopped, breathless and reverent. "Lady Kiana," one said, kneeling. "The queen requests your presence at the festival. She says the sky will not shine without you." Kiana stopped, eyes wide. Her feet slowed. The anklets dimmed. "Me?" she whispered. The other attendant nodded. "She commands it, but not as a queen. As one who has seen the sky listen to your dance." Kiana looked to her grandmother, who stood near the edge of the trees. The old woman gave her a small nod, lips trembling with pride. Then Kiana stepped forward, the children clearing a path for her like petals falling. Her heart pounded. She had never been called to perform. Never been praised. Never been welcomed. And yet now the sky waited for her. When she arrived at the festival grounds, all turned to look. She was still barefoot. Her dress was woven by hand, plain but clean. But the anklets gleamed like starlight caught in brass. The queen stepped forward from her throne. She descended the steps with quiet dignity and bowed her head, not fully but enough for the crowd to gasp. "I ask," the queen said loud enough for all to hear, "that you dance. For the sky. For the people. For what tradition has forgotten." Kiana blinked fast, then nodded once. She stepped past the noble dancers, who moved aside in silence. The stage belonged to her now. Not by appointment but by calling. As she lifted her arms, a breeze returned. As she began to move, the stars blinked back to life. One, then five, then dozens. The moon slid from behind the clouds like a face from hiding. The drums, sensing her rhythm, started again, this time following her, not leading. The crowd watched, entranced. The elders said nothing. Even Obidi bowed his head, speechless. And in the sky above, where there had been darkness, now there was light. Because Kiana danced. And the sky refused to shine without her. Kiana stood at the edge of the festival platform, dust still clinging to her ankles and the hem of her faded tunic. The crowd around her parted like waves, uncertain whether to welcome or reject her. The elders stood stiffly behind the queen, their lips thin with resistance, but none dared speak. The queen's eyes, sharp yet searching, locked onto Kiana with a quiet intensity. The musicians had stopped. The dancers on the stage had retreated in confusion. The moonless sky remained sealed above, silent and watchful. And then, softly, the anklets around Kiana's ankles began to hum. She took one hesitant step forward. The sound was like a whisper of wind over dry leaves. Another step, and the ground beneath her shimmered faintly. Her body moved instinctively, not with the practiced choreography of court dancers but with something far older, a rhythm that came not from discipline but from soul. Kiana closed her eyes. She did not see the queen's breath catch, or the noblemen whispering to one another. She did not see the young children pushing to the front of the crowd, their eyes wide with recognition. She did not see the priestess from the shrine standing quietly at the edge of the gathering, her milky eyes lifted toward the sky. All Kiana felt was the rhythm building inside her, pulsing like a heartbeat through her bare feet. She spun slowly, her arms stretching like branches reaching for the sky. With each movement her anklets rang louder, no longer a whisper but a call to something waiting above. The stars flickered uncertainly then steadied. A breeze swept across the plaza, lifting loose petals and fabric like blessings in flight. The queen took a step back, her hand unconsciously rising to her chest. Kiana moved faster now, her body weaving patterns into the very air. Her dance was not perfect. It was not polished. But it was alive. Her feet struck the stone, and a soft light pulsed out in ripples, expanding with each step. With every turn, her energy spread, like music that could not be heard but was felt deep in the marrow. Then it happened. The clouds above, thick and stubborn for days, began to tear open. A single moonbeam broke through, not faint or distant, but sharp, silver and sacred. It fell directly on Kiana, wrapping her in a column of light. The moment the moon touched her skin, the anklets glowed white-hot, and her feet left the ground. She hovered for a breath. And then the sky exploded. Waves of light burst outward, not just moonlight but colors never seen before. A rainbow shimmer that danced like fire and water in the heavens. It swept across the sky in arcs and loops, like paintbrushes across a black canvas. An aurora of divine favor. The crowd gasped as stars reignited in constellations long forgotten. Some elders fell to their knees without realizing it. The queen, regal and proud, lowered herself to the ground with trembling arms, her head bowed. Kiana continued to dance, now not on the stage but above it, as if the moon itself had taken her hand. Her body became a shadow of light, her face glowing with peace and power. She twirled once more, and with that turn the winds returned, playful and strong. They lifted hair, rattled lanterns and bent trees toward her. Birds flew in circles overhead. Drums from the mountains, unheard for generations, seemed to echo faintly in the distance. The old rhythm had returned to the world. Below, the villagers cried. Not tears of sadness, but of awe. Even the sternest elder, the one who had once said she was of no honor, buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. The children who had followed her earlier began dancing themselves, awkwardly, joyfully, mimicking her steps with wide grins and wide eyes. It spread like fire, a joyful, reverent fire. From her place beside the stage, the old blind priestess smiled. Her voice carried over the crowd like a breeze. She is the rhythm of the sky, she whispered. And the sky remembers. Kiana descended slowly, her feet touching the ground again with the softness of feathers. The moment she landed, the light dimmed, though it did not vanish. The sky now held its moon high and full. The aurora lingered, curling above like a heavenly scarf. Silence gripped the crowd, but it was a sacred silence. Then the queen rose. She walked forward with slow, deliberate steps, each footfall echoing. The guards tried to follow, but she waved them back. She stopped directly in front of Kiana. The two stood, a barefoot orphan and the crowned ruler of the land, face to face, equal in the glow. Without hesitation the queen bent one knee. The people gasped. She lowered her head, her crown gleaming under the divine light. "Forgive us," she said quietly, voice barely audible but strong enough to carry. "We have forgotten what truly honors the heavens." Kiana didn't respond. Not with words. She knelt too beside the queen. Their heads bowed together. One born of palace marble, the other of clay floors and wind-blessed dances. The people followed. One by one, nobles, merchants, farmers, elders, they knelt, heads lowered not in shame alone but in reverence. The plaza turned into a field of bent spines and lifted hearts. Only the children remained standing, still twirling with the joy of movement, their laughter rising like incense to the sky. The priestess took a step forward and raised her arms. "She has awakened the sky," she declared. "And with it our forgotten truth." The drums began again, this time real, from the festival musicians who had watched in frozen silence. The beat was different now, echoing the rhythm of Kiana's dance. Flutes followed. Strings joined. And then the plaza became a celebration once more, not for the noble families, not for the queen's pride, but for the spirit of the earth and sky made whole again. Kiana stood beside the queen. Not as a subject. Not as a performer. But as a bearer of rhythm, of light, of the very voice of the sky. The anklets no longer glowed. Their purpose for now had been fulfilled. But she knew, as did the winds, that her dance was not the end. It was the beginning of something much greater.